called The Language of Addiction, and she worked with Professor Megan Ringel. We appreciate you both being here today, and I'm going to pass things over to Lorelai to get started.
Awesome. Hello, thank you all for coming. So today we're going to walk through the language of addiction and how it influences resiliency, recovery, and relapse. So it could be, so this is our general timeline that we have. You're going to see it up in the top left-hand corner of the screen, kind of telling you where we are at in this journey. So let's go ahead and get started. So the COVID-19 pandemic caused a lot of social and economic upheaval. Most specifically, though, it caused a rise in mental illness. In December of 2020, we saw a 42% rise in mental illness of adults reporting depression and anxiety. 82.5 million people reported having a mental illness, a substance use disorder, or both. And 13% of those people started or increased use of their substances as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So that leads us to addressing why addiction and mental health are so intertwined. So addiction and mental health share a neurobiology. About 50% of individuals who experience a mental health disorder will also have a substance use disorder at some point in their lives. Let's see here. I was going to use my notes back down. So a key factor in this is dysregulation that's shared between the two. The dysregulation is mostly seen in the reward processing, motivation, and decision-making aspects of the cognitive functioning. As far as reward processing goes, for both mental illness and addiction, you see a lack of pleasure in daily activities such as eating and human connectedness. You also see a lack of motivation. So in this dysregulation, this is why you don't use it. In this dysregulation, for a lack of motivation, you see people with depression who aren't willing to engage in activities that are good for their mental health or well-being. And then you also see an inhibition in decision-making processes, which means that they're going to do more short-term activities for that immediate gain rather than engaging in long-term activities for their betterment. And you see that both in addiction and mental health. Because of this, we see an increased demand in mental health services prior to post-COVID-19. So in 2019, 1.6 million people needed treatment, but only 2.6 million people received any. And that was prior to COVID. So I'm just like checking my notes because I got lost. There we go. Okay. So 80% of people did not receive treatment in 2021. So we don't have the current data on exactly how many people in 2022 as a result. But we do want to note that this is a problem pre-COVID, and it's only getting worse now. So this is important to know because we're going to look at the shared risk factors for mental illness and addiction. Some of these shared risk factors are genetic, environmental, and behavioral. Trauma is also a significant risk factor that's shared between the two that can change the structure and function of the brain in both people with mental illnesses and addiction. A couple examples of genetic risk factors include family history and specific genes that are associated with dopamine, metabolism, and uptake. And then we also have environmental factors such as trauma, post-traumatic stress that can lead to the development of both of these disorders. And then there's also the behavioral risk factors that refer to impulsivity and risk-taking tendencies. So because mental illness and substance use disorders are so intertwined, we also want to look at what we can do to treat these. Basically, our treatment right now for addiction falls into two main camps. We have the 12-step program, so we have CBT. 12, they vary a lot in their philosophies, but 12-step programs focus on spirituality, a higher power, peer support, kind of relinquishing power and claiming like the patterns. CBT is an umbrella term for a current set of cognitive therapies and psychotherapy today, and it's the most evidence-based set of psychotherapies that we have today. I also want to note that of the National Survey of Substance Abuse Treatment Services has reported that facilities offer, only 33% of facilities offer a 12-step program, whereas 66.7% offer CBT therapy. I also want to make note that CBT has a 50 to 70% efficacy rate. This is important to know because the effectiveness of addiction treatment depends on various individual factors, like how motivated the person is, their environmental factors, engagement, and treatment. But given that information, if we look at the 2.6 million people who suffered from addiction prior to COVID, who were actually able to get treatment, and if we take into account the efficacy rate of 50 to 70%, combined with the 72% of people who receive CBT treatment, 66.7 is wrong. That's not the correct number. I don't know why that's okay. It's 72%. Then we can estimate that prior to 2020, 936,000 and 1.3 million people would likely recover from addiction through CBT therapy. That's not too bad if you ignore the fact that these 19 million people who needed treatment weren't able to get it. So it's imperative that we take action to improve the effectiveness of therapeutic interventions for individuals struggling with addiction. One potential avenue to explore is the use of neurolinguistics from a fresh perspective. So neurolinguistic programming is an approach to communication and personal development. The neurolinguistic techniques used in using these protocols could offer a more holistic and integrated approach to therapeutic interventions. Two key techniques are reframing and anchoring. Reframing is a technique used to change the way a person perceives a situation or behavior by transferring negative or unhelpful thought patterns into positive or more useful ones. By identifying problematic thinking patterns, we can target them in therapy and work to replace them with resilient thinking. This can help individuals develop more effective coping mechanisms, strategies, improve their self-esteem and motivation, and reduce the risk of relapse. A key aspect of this is the role of self-narration, recovery, resiliency, and relapse. I also want to note that NLP, like neurolinguistic programming, was first originated in the 1970s. It's been used widely in organizational settings and healthcare settings. These are just some of the companies that have used NLP in training programs for their employees. It does improve self-advocacy, self-awareness, communication, setting goals, and attaining goals. However, it is not currently widely used in psychology or therapeutic fields because it's based on the qualitative human interactions and it has yet to be quantified. The Swiss word argument for is quantification. So let's move on to that slide. So I wanted to note that the reason why NLP is so important is that qualitative human interaction and its approach to communication and personal development that has really seen an increase for individuals who undergo that sort of training, which is why it is widely used in organizations. And reframing is a key technique in this. So here we have kind of a case study of a traditional addiction narrative. Self-narration is a powerful tool that can help individuals develop resilience and recover from challenging experiences, including addiction. According to research, addiction often involves negative self-narratives where individuals see themselves as helpless, out of control, and unworthy of recovery. Some examples of this are these negative self-talk words. There's a lot of use of failing, of worthlessness, idiot, loser. That's pretty common to see that in people who are struggling with mental health or addiction. However, individuals can use self-narration to challenge negative self-talk and develop a more positive and empowering narrative about their recovery. You can see this displayed in this recovery narrative, utilizing different NLP techniques such as reframing combined with visualization and self-talk. By incorporating self-narration into the addiction recovery, individuals can develop the psychological resources resources they need to cope with and recover from addiction and build their resiliency. You can see that in evidence in the feeling capable and succeeding terminology that's used here. So this is just one example. So the capabilities of neurolinguistics in this therapeutic environment really stem from the idea of resiliency. Resiliency is the capacity to withstand, recover, and grow from difficult experiences involving cognitive, emotional, and behavioral factors. It is not a fixed trait, but a set of skills and behaviors that can be learned and developed over time, so you're not stuck with whatever resiliency you have. You can work on it and build it, which is one of the best things. Neurolinguistics, on the other hand, is a key tool in the development of resiliency. So we're going to get a little bit more into this. Perfect. So we already addressed the neurobiology between substance use disorders and mental illness and how they share a lot of risk factors and how those risk factors can change the cognitive functioning and structure of the brain, resulting in kind of that ongoing negative feedback cycle. We just touched on neurolinguistics, but we're going to get a little bit more into it. So this field of study combines different areas like linguistics, psychology, and neuroscience to understand how our brains produce and process language. When we talk to ourselves, it activates specific brain regions in our brains. These are the same ones that are involved in language processing. So that means that our brain treats our story as if it were a language. So the words that we use when we're talking to ourselves, our brains know that that's not true. It's still internalizing all of that. Which I think is really cool. So researchers have used different methods, such as neuroimaging techniques, like fMRI and EEG, to understand how our brains process language. They've also been using neuroimaging techniques to understand how addiction affects our brains as well. Neuroimaging can also provide valuable insights into the neural mechanisms underlying addiction. So this sheds more light on mechanisms of change, providing evidence for the effectiveness of neurolinguistic treatments. Neuroimaging can be a powerful tool for supporting the use of neurolinguistics in addiction treatments and transdiagnostic therapeutic interventions. It can help advance the understanding of how the neural basis of mental health, can help us with understanding neural basis of mental health and resilience, thus bolstering efficacy rate of that certain therapeutic intervention. So, there we go. So in light of the recent surge in addiction rates due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it is imperative to incorporate new and innovative approaches to addiction treatment. We need to invest in the use of these tools to restructure NLP's methodological processes and rigor, allowing for evidence-based therapeutic interventions that can make a significant difference in the lives of those struggling with addiction. This by looking at neurolinguistics. And that is all I have for you.
Thank you so much, Lorelai. Are there questions for Lorelai? Dr. Goldie?
So if you had like all the resources in the world, right? If you had an MRI scanner, right? What would be like your first like dream research study that you would want to do to test some of these ideas?
Yeah, so I would love to create, so we're gonna like extrapolate NLP, right? Take what worked in there, that neurolinguistic aspect, and create a protocol that we can then use in a research study to see if like, okay, well, if we use these specific words and this sort of addiction treatment, like how does their brain change and how does that impact their like rates of like recovery or their emotional awareness of their self-resiliency and kind of be able to like, quantify that. So I would like to start with investing in really getting a solid evidence-based foundation for neurolinguistics.
I was curious if a cognitive science guide or research in finding out some of the answers.
Yeah, well, I've always been interested in linguistics, and I've always been trying to figure out a way to tie it to psychology, and then I took a behavioral neuroscience classes and decided to smush them all together. For as far as cognitive goes, there's a lot of research research, especially in CBT now, coming about evidence-based mindfulness practices, lots of affirmation and visualizations. So you see a lot of what work in neuro-linguistic programming has been taken and used in a lot of these other evidence-based therapies. They just don't say NLP, and they kind of lose it on like the neuro-linguistic aspect. So researching all of that has helped kind of inform where I was kind of going with this.
I think that was my question. I wasn't able to hear the question, but I was curious in, what drew you to NLP? I think it was a great addition, and I'm just interested in what drew you to that.
Yeah, I've always been interested in linguistics because words are so important, and the words that we tell ourselves when we are going through a traumatic event, and because trauma is so closely related to the development of mental illness, and mental illness is so closely related to the development of an alcoholic disorder or substance use disorder, I was like, there has to be something there, because there are many people who don't develop these things, who have similar experiences. And so I was like, it has to be something around the words they use, they tell themselves, and how they interpret the words that other people are telling them. So that's really what got me back.
Thank you, and I'd like to invite your advisor, Dr. Rigo, up to say a few words and also to present you with the cord and the stole that you'll wear at graduation again in recognition of this project, but also of all of your hard work in your honor program, Lorelai.
So as you can see, Lorelai is quite the budding researcher. Lorelai was my advisee assigned to me a couple of years ago, and I enjoyed talking with her the second that I met you, even though I'd never had you in class before, but then I got to have you in research habits, and I got to see Lorelai putting on her research hat, and I thought, oh yeah, this seems very natural. This is a good fit for you. She did a great job. With one of her research partners here, Jake, actually, in their project. But you were one of those students who said, oh yeah, I will do the tediousness of research and all the details that actually excites me and I want to do more. So that's, you have that spark, and you've been ambitious in the best sense of the word since you came here about sort of where you're taking your degree and what you want to do next. So it's been a pleasure to see you develop. She's also my fantastic statistics TA for me, and so she's also quite a natural teacher. She would just sit down and start explaining things to students in ways they could understand. So you've got really the whole professor package kind of going for you. Her thesis is really, this is very independent work. I am not particularly qualified to talk about NLP. I'm a social psychologist by training, but I was glad to be some small part of it. This is Lorelai's vision of these are my interests. I want to connect these things. I want to talk about how NLP is this black sheep almost in psychology, but it has so many things that are maybe worth studying further. And so this was her vision and her thesis to lay out how that would work and how research and interventions could advance if we incorporated some of those ideas further. So it's a wonderful intellectual work, and I hope you get to take this into graduate school. I have a feeling we'll eventually be calling Lorelai Dr. Wilson. Look forward to that day, to that email. But congratulations on all of your accomplishments here at St. Edward's. Congratulations on graduating in a couple of weeks. I'm going to miss you, but it's been such wonderful accomplishments.